Welcome everyone to our, let's see, I guess this is our April ICODR member meeting. Delighted to see everybody. I hope everyone is getting excited about the Prague ODR forum that Zbynek is hosting. So check out the details at odr2024.org. The agenda is posted. I think it's packed to the gills with lots of exciting sessions. So please join us there if you can. But we had a wonderful time at the ABA dispute resolution section meeting last week, and Bob was there. So it was amazing. Online dispute resolution was the hottest topic. I can remember a few years ago at the ABA DR meeting, we'd do a session on ODR, and it would just be Dan Rainey and me and Ethan Catch. That was it. We were the only people that showed up, and we'd be like, oh, okay, well, we don't even need to talk because we know what we're doing. Now it's the keynotes, and it's everywhere. So ODR is hot, 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 and the AI stuff is moving very, very fast as well. So please engage if you can with all of these upcoming meetings. But I'm delighted today. Now, let me make sure I have the pronunciation correct. I think it's Pink DR, right?
Correct.
It's not okay, because I did Pin QDR, and I'm like, what does Pin Q mean? What is that? But no, it's Pink DR, and I'm delighted to have Iain here today to walk us through a little bit and show us the latest and greatest. So without further ado, does anybody have any other announcements or questions or things they'd like to share off the bat? If not, we can hand it over to Iain to kick things off. Okay, I don't see any eager eyes. So Iain, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being with us here today, and we're all very, very excited to hear about what you're working on.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Colin. So hi, everyone. I'm Iain. I am a barrister in my day job in London. I practice in joint venture disputes and shareholder disputes. I'm here with Greg Billinge, who is the COO of Pink DR, and I am the CEO of Pink DR. And this is a project that we've had running since inception for about a year, since the platform was ready, as we'll see later, from about the beginning of this year. And so what we're just going to cover is I'll just do a very high level summary of what Pink DR is and some of its key features. And then Greg will do a slightly more detailed run through of a demo of the platform so you can see how it operates, the sort of features that we've built in, and the particular way in which the process runs. But we will start with a little video.
How long should it take to resolve a commercial dispute? A year or more? Or much less? An online platform that can resolve legal disputes in just 6 to 8 weeks. The entire process is conducted on our simple, intuitive platform, accessible anywhere, anytime, global, scalable, without limit. We can handle disputes anywhere in the world. The future of dispute resolution is here.
So Pink DR resolves legal disputes in 6 to 8 weeks, and it produces a binding outcome at a fixed cost, and that's the essence of it. Who is involved? Well, this is our advisory group. We have amongst these people the heads of legal at BT and IBM and GE, and the Phoenix Group, which is a FTSE 100 company, and the ex-head of legal at the Standard Chartered Bank. We also have 45 investors from across the industry. We did a fundraise in the early part of last year, and the idea of that was to not raise a huge amount of money necessarily, but to put together a group of people who would want to promote and support the business. And that includes lawyers, arbitrators. There's an ex-justice minister in there. The IDRC, which is the arbitral venue in London, is itself a shareholder, and you will know many of the investors in that group. The key features of Pink DR, if I turn to that first of all, are if we just go back a page, please, just the arbitrators are first of all the arbitrators that are involved. So in each case, a sole arbitrator is appointed, and we have some really fantastic arbitrators who are the same sorts of people who would be appearing in a ICC arbitration or an LCIA arbitration or a SIAC arbitration. It's that sort of caliber of person. We have a waiting list of more than 50 arbitrators who would like to join the panel. I sort of always knew that that was never going to be difficult, but it has definitely proved to be the case. We have been effectively inundated with people wanting to act as arbitrator, but we're maintaining a waiting list because we just don't have the resource to bring everyone on. It's not, though, a closed list. A suitable candidate is appointed for each case. So if it was a New York law dispute, then ordinarily one would have a New York law lawyer, New York law qualified lawyer, so that it's tailored to the particular dispute. The second key feature, if we move on to this slide, is that PINC-DR is fast and it's binding. And I just want to highlight that by what we all know to be the characteristics of traditional binding dispute resolution, which is shown on the screen there. And that we all know is what is typically the case for all disputes. And for disputes which are at a higher level and worth more, the type of disputes that I'm doing in my day job, the traditional way of doing things works fine. But for smaller disputes, those traditional ways of proceeding just don't work. And so if we go to the next slide, what PINC-DR is providing is a fresh approach to commercial disputes. And just focusing on the three items on the left. First is that PINC-DR is really slick and fast. It is 6 to 8 weeks from start to finish. So whereas ordinarily in this jurisdiction and most jurisdictions around the world, a typical dispute will take more than 12 months. This is vastly different. The entire process is online from end to end. So from the starting submission from the claimant through the correspondence between the parties to the award and everything in between. So that the arbitrator corresponding with the parties, making requests. The entire process is done online and all recorded online. And because it's so intuitive, it's ideal for associates in a firm to manage cases themselves, or indeed for companies themselves, in-house counsel to run the process themselves. It's very, very straightforward and very intuitive. It's also binding and enforceable like a judgment. In fact, as we all probably know, better than a judgment. What PINC-DR produces is a New York Convention award. And so whilst a very high percentage of arbitral awards generally, but also including through PINC-DR, will be voluntarily complied with, the usual stats are around about 75% are voluntarily complied with. It's good to know that if you need it, it's a New York Convention award and binding and enforceable in that way. Now, if we then just go on a little bit to the next slide, this is who we think that PINC-DR is for. And we've set out there some of the typical clients of PINC-DR. But what PINC-DR really does is that it takes disputes off the desk of companies, because everything is handed over to PINC-DR and put through a very structured process on the platform. So the typical way of parties going through a toing and froing of very frustrating correspondence, ultimately which leads nowhere, is removed. There's none of that. It's really effective to determine their disputes. And we also do the process of corresponding with the other party so that both parties agree to use PINC-DR if it's not already in their contract. And whilst we say to people, well, we can't guarantee that the other party will agree to use it, there are various things that we are able to say and demonstrate to be quite persuasive about that. But the whole idea is that we take that dispute and are able to say, right, we will now take control of that. We'll take it off your desk, which in many ways is what we think that a typical client wants, and typically and particularly a typical client with this type of dispute, i.e. SMEs smaller value claims also by larger companies. The third key feature of PINC-DR is its simple fee structure. And the key is that the cost is certain and it's determined in advance. And we do that through a single upfront fee. It's set in advance of the process on a transparent scale, which is available on the website. We've given here just some indications of some value of cases and what the fee would be for those cases. But once that fee is set at the outset, and as I say, it's all published on the website, it doesn't increase. It can't increase during the process because someone says, oh, actually the case has become more complicated, which is a very typical feature of traditional arbitration. But what that also means is that it's very, very easy for clients to budget for. It makes it much easier for clients to assess the risks because they know the fixed cost and they know the duration. And if they've got at least some advice, they know their prospects of success or have got some advice on that. And what that does is it really takes away all of the cost uncertainty for clients. So those are the three key features of PINC-DR that I wanted to highlight to you. And then with that, I'd like to hand over to Greg, please, to do a bit of a demo of the platform.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. So I'm going to give you a little walkthrough through the case creation process and then have a look inside PINC-DR in a second. But just before I do that, just wanted to highlight some sort of usability approach that we've got here. So the idea was to always create a very slick, simple platform, well guided, to help people with varying levels of legal experience to navigate. One of the ways we've done that is through colour, and that comes through from our logo. So you might have seen in some of our branding and so on, we kind of embraced the flamingo as a bit of a mascot of PINC-DR, so much so that when we were forming our logo, it's an abstract of a flamingo's head in three sections. With one section, the magenta, that represents the claimant, the goldy colour represents the respondent, and then the blue, the arbitrator. And those three colours are set right through the experience of all the users inside the platform, which is why I wanted to just highlight that. The second part before I dive in is around the timeline. I'll send these slides around afterwards so you can have a closer look. There's some of this is on our website too. This denotes a 6 to 8 week timeline and who's got to do what during that process. So I'm going to concentrate in the demo on this sort of create claim process and quickly walk through that, and then jump into this process inside the system for the sort of to and fro between the arbitrator and the parties. But essentially, this shows how the timeline extends across the 6 to 8 weeks. And the tight timelines for the parties and the arbitrator to stick to throughout, which is all provided for in the rules, and of course that party agreement if they already don't have contract clauses. Okay, so this is a short video, it's sped up. I'm going to talk over the top of it to go through the claim creation process and highlight some of the main points. So when you come to create a claim on PINC-DR, the first thing is details of the companies involved. This is the claimant in this instance, and then the respondent. This is, of course, a fictitious case between us and one of our friends here, Crafty Counsel. You also, at this point, provide the details of the primary representative of the claimant. Other representatives can be added later. Here at this point, I'll just pause it a second, is where you either define that you've already agreed to use PINC-DR through contract clauses, in which case you would upload the contract, or you upload a party agreement. If you don't have an agreement, then this process guides you through getting that agreement offline with your respondent. So I just pick that up again. This is an example of some of the guidance that's inside the system, these sort of help tips and so on that extend right through. And then here is an example of uploading a party agreement. A lot of the upload processes are the same. This bit, short summary, the amount of the claim, and a very short summary. Really important this is, I'll show you this inside the system. We have this throughout in various ways of short summaries to help people understand documents or submissions as quickly as possible without going through the whole detail. And then this is where the sort of substance of the claim is put in, the full submission. This example here, I've copy pasted from a Word document. There's formatting in there, numbered paragraphs, and all of the things that you'd expect to be able to form a certain submission. We have actually been asked in the past is, can you just upload a Word document or a PDF of your submission? Now, the sort of short answer is yes, but the longer answer is not really. What we'd like, and you'll see inside the system, to have all of that data inside the screens so people can navigate the submission, and some of the other features that sit around, like linking through to documents or comments within places in the documents, to enable the best interaction without opening lots of attachments and so on. So I'll pick that straight back up again. Again here, uploading a contract as an example of a piece of evidence. Again, this short summary, like I mentioned before. And I'm uploading a second piece of evidence here. This is an email to back up one of the points that's made in this claim. And then after that, we will move on to the review process. It allows you to go back and forth, change things in that flow before you make a submission, and then the payment of the fee. So that example there was a payment by bank transfer. We do offer credit card payments too. But yes, the user can define that they paid it offline, and then that goes into the administrative process that comes next, where we verify things like the party agreement or the contract clause, the payment. We do KYC. And all of the checks that you'd expect us to do on the claimant and the respondent. Okay, so next, couple of examples of how the parties are notified. So this example on the left-hand side is an email, a typical email that you would receive from PINCTR. This particular email is the email that would go to the respondent, inviting them to join the claim. That's after the administrative process has happened, and we've also verified the payment. And then on the right there is an example of some notifications within the system. So any interaction, any new document, any instruction from the arbitrator will always result in a notification similar to the ones you see now. Okay, so now I'm going to flip over to the live system. This is inside PINCTR now. This is the view that you would see as either party. This is actually the admin view, so there's a couple of extra options here on the left that I won't go into, but this is essentially the same view that everybody has within a case. So the case is made up of several pages, several screens, an overview which has these short summaries on, as I mentioned earlier, sort of trying to reiterate the importance of those, but also this area at the top, which shows where the claim is in its process. So this particular claim is with an arbitrator for review, but has already gone through the respondent providing their response, and that also being verified by PINCTR and approved. This box here that says arbitrator review in progress, that's what the administrator sees, but each user in this box sees a different set of text. So if, for example, the respondent has an action upon them that the arbitrator has set a date for, that will be shown very clearly there. And equally, when the award is presented, it will show there that the award has been submitted. Please click here to go through to the award. So each interaction is dependent on the time of the process that we're at, and who the user is. Also in the summary, short details of the claim, how far we are through it. In this case, we're in week 7, and then the most recent documents that have been uploaded for quick access. Now down the left-hand side here for the menus is where all the detail is. So this is the detail of the claim. That's all the information that you saw me entering in the short video just now. And then this is the response in exactly the same format. They're asked the same questions, they're shown the same screens. This is transparent to all users. Everybody sees the same thing. There's no hiding or private areas inside PINCTR. Then the document repository of all the documents that have been uploaded by all the parties, including the arbitrator. And then finally here, the messages section. So I want to talk about this very briefly. So in this instance, the arbitrator has put forward a procedural order to the parties with several requirements upon them. Then they have introduced themselves. The arbitrator controls messaging. They can turn it on and off. And in this case, Guy, the arbitrator, has introduced himself, said there's going to be a procedural order. And then actually, because they're comfortable with that, the respondent provided responses in the messages to the arbitrator's questions in the procedural order, which is absolutely acceptable inside PINCTR. It's also acceptable to upload a document in response. But this is the way we would like the messaging application to be used for some more informal requests, but also to answer formal requests if that's the quickest and most effective way to do so. A couple of other aspects of the PINC-DR system while I'm in here. The notifications that I showed you before, these are examples of that. This is an administrative view, so there's a few more here than you would see for a case at this stage. But then also here a list of claims, and this shows that you could have multiple claims going on within one company, or be an advisor or representative of multiple companies managing claims through PINC-DR, and see them all within the dashboard and have a consolidated view of notifications and things that you need to do. So with that, that's the end of that. Feel free again, as Iain said, to chip in if you've got any questions, and we can come to some at the end too. And then the final part, just wanted to touch upon, and you guys were talking about the sort of the furor around AI at the moment. So these are some things that we're working on at the moment. That's adding in some intelligence, some assisted features, as we're calling them, inside PINC-DR. In fact, we're actually waiting on a decision from UK Government Grant Authority around supporting some of the initiatives on this at the moment, which should be really exciting. So throughout the timeline, which I've come back to here, there's various points in which our assistance features will help the parties and the arbitrators. I'll sort of highlight a couple of these. You know, some of the standard things that you see, they're almost commoditized now around sort of AI and these large language models, helping with drafting, auto summarization throughout the process. But some of the things that we think are really important and could be essential as part of this process for arbitrators is empowering this timeline and making the abilities for the arbitrators and the parties too, but the arbitrators to understand quickly the submissions through summaries, through strength analysis, various other features to help them navigate the case as quickly as possible. And then at the other end, which is the example I'm going to give in a second, is around completing the award and supporting the arbitrator in completing the award in the most efficient way possible. And I think probably most of you are aware how onerous it is to produce an arbitral award, and particularly things like procedural histories. So the example here is, sort of mock this up using ChatGPT, but our sort of model on this isn't quite like this. Is just for presentation purposes. So because everything in PINC-DR is online, we have this temporal history inside the system. There's also the messaging application that I showed you before, and all of the documents and submissions and so on. They play very well into auto summarization and AI features to be able to draft a procedural history. Now, this little video here shows that being created from real data in a claim that we created. But it just shows how quickly that initial draft of the procedural history, in fact, actually, they wouldn't even see this being generated like this. It would just be there when they open the first draft of the award for the arbitrator to then, continue on with the draft. So that's one example there of some of the AI features we've got planned. And with that, we can move over to some Q&A.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much, Iain and Greg. This is very, very slick. And I love the flamingos. I just need to figure out, are the flamingos the arbitrators, the parties? I haven't decided. But I think your design is really crisp and clear and just wonderful. I'm sure lots of people have questions. Let me just start out by asking about panel management. So you have some great arbitrators there. How do you handle assigning arbitrators to cases? Is it that parties to a case can get a list of arbitrators that they can strike and rank, and how do you ensure that the panelists that are recommended for a case have the right expertise for that case?
Yeah. So as things stand, it is PINC-DR that selects the arbitrator, and the parties do not. That is not to exclude the possibility that the parties liaise with each other and agree through a ranking system or otherwise to a particular arbitrator, and we could facilitate that in the similar way that sole arbitrators are sometimes chosen, or chairmen of tribunals are sometimes chosen.
Sure.
But the default is that the chair is chosen, that the arbitrator is chosen by PINC-DR.
I can see how that would expedite the process a lot.
Exactly.
6 weeks is not a lot of time. So you don't want to go back and forth on a bunch of arbitrators. And I saw Greg mentioned also that there's a possibility of using AI for conflict checks, which would be great. That would expedite a lot of that process too. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
when an arbitrator is appointed, or we suggest the case to an arbitrator, they have to go through a process which I didn't show you, which is to confirm their conflicts and also formally confirm that they can complete the matter within the time frame that's allowed.
Sure.
And obviously we mentioned single arbitrator only at this stage. And just coming back to what we said about this whole panel of choices, it's on our roadmap actually, to provide the parties with a sort of a ranked list of arbitrators and allow them to confidentially put them in order. And then the system would allocate, and that would be more automation around the selection of the arbitrator.
Got it.
And the system allocating it, yeah.
That makes sense. So let me open it up to everybody. But Merez, I see your hands up. What did you want to say? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. Yeah,
yes,
there you go.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was on transportation and I succeeded to connect only 5 minutes ago. So you may have already addressed these issues, but I'll ask the questions just in case. So if I understand correctly, it's a sort of an expedited procedure. And what is the value of the dispute, or at least the limit of the value of the dispute that you're currently handling, given the fact that it's decided in 6 weeks and with a sole arbitrator?
So the minimum value is £5,000. That's largely because the English Arbitration Act provides for that as a minimum level.
Mm-hmm.
We have deliberately not set an upper limit. If you look on our website, our pricing page gives figures up to a claim value of £2 million. But in reality, it really depends on who the client is and what the nature of the dispute is as to where the upper limit is set for any particular dispute. So to take an example, I spoke to IAG, who are the holding company for British Airways and Iberia. And they said to me, for disputes which are worth less than £3 million, they effectively consider those cases to be unlitigatable because of the cost and time and hassle that's involved. So for them, actually, the limit for this type of thing would be much higher. But for other companies, they would say it would be much lower. And I think the sweet spot for this, at least currently, are claims which are £1 million or less.
And are the claims, are the services offered to all types of industry and products?
Yes, they are. Now, one of the things that I mean, because yes, so the short answer is yes, and not only that, but also it's available worldwide. Any dispute from any jurisdiction could be brought under this platform. It doesn't matter what the law is, it doesn't matter where the parties are located, it doesn't matter what the parties choose as the seat. But of course, the issue for us is that at this stage, we need to focus. You can't be everything to everyone right at the start. Yeah. And so what we have done at this stage is to focus on certain verticals. So we've made particular efforts in relation to startups and fast-growing companies, likewise with technology companies, and also with cargo claims. That's just because that's the level of interest that we got at the start, and so we focused on those as areas just because you've got to focus somewhere. But there are all sorts of areas where people say, oh, actually it'd be very useful here. I mean, employment claims and consumer claims are obviously another very big area, but we're not yet focusing on those because just because of the scale that's involved.
Okay. Are there some statistics or some feedback already, or is it too early at the too early stage? Sorry, to have some feedback from users and some statistics.
Yeah, it's too early just now. I mean, obviously, there's lots of bits of ad hoc people and we're putting together just a collection of quotes from people and feedback that we can use. But it's too early to have anything sort of meaningful.
And sorry, final question: how are you addressing the potential users? I mean, which people are you trying to reach out to?
So we are focusing on two groups. One is law firms, because for law firms, I mean, actually, for law firms, depending on the size of the law firm, their interest varies, or what they get from the process varies. For large law firms,
Yeah.
Take a kind of Baker McKenzie or something like that. It's about cases that would otherwise come to that firm when the first conversation is, there is no way that we could do that case for you because of the cost and time that would be involved. It's not going to work. Even if we go through it and you win, you're still effectively going to lose because of what you've spent on the case. So for large law firms, it means they can keep those cases, keep the revenue from them, but also more importantly, keep the client. For smaller law firms, it's slightly different. It's an efficiency play because they earn their fee within a much shorter period than would typically be the case. So we're speaking to law firms, and then the other big group we're speaking to are in-house counsel, general counsel, chief legal officers of companies, and in two groups. One, smaller companies that might not have the expertise typically to deal with this kind of dispute. But then on the other hand, also bigger companies where they have a raft of cases, but find this lower swathe of cases, say of less than £1 million, incredibly difficult to deal with.
They might be a better client than the law firms, I think. Thank you very much for the answers.
Thank you for that.
Mirez is asking this because she has a long track record working at the ICC building systems and trying to figure out these markets. So I think there's a lot of accumulated wisdom that she has that might benefit you as well, Iain. I was actually wondering, Iain, and Greg, if you could just tell a little bit of the story about how you came to this. How did it start? I know, Iain, when we had our conversation before, you have a lot of relevant legal expertise that sort of led you to this, but I think it'd be interesting for people to know kind of what was the seed that grew into Pink DR.
Yeah, sure. I'll give my bit, and then perhaps Greg can give his journey as well. So what this came from was a discussion with the second most senior judge in England and Wales, someone who's called Sir Geoffrey Voss, and myself and Guy Pendle, who is the head of disputes at CMS and is also one of the co-founders of Pink DR, met with Geoffrey Voss, and we were discussing digitization of disputes and why it is that disputes take so long to be resolved, really irrespective of the size of them. And we came out of that meeting thinking it doesn't have to be that way. It really shouldn't take a year plus to resolve a case that's worth $300,000. What it takes is an exchange of submission by each party saying, this is why I'm right, or this is why I feel wronged. And then someone who is appointed, a decision maker, who is on it, who gets the case, shakes it around, does what needs to be done in terms of working out, from their knowledge, what the case is about and what they need to know, and then decides it. And I've done cases in this sort of time frame. In sports law, it's very typical to do cases in a very short time frame. In expedited arbitrations, even. It's not unheard of to deal with cases in a relatively tight time frame. And so anyway, so we came out of that meeting with that thought, and that is then what led to the development of this project. And really one of the first things we did was to do a fundraise. And as I mentioned, we did that fundraiser and got 45 investors and got really brilliant interest from people. I mean, it's fair to say that I don't think anyone that we've spoken to has told us that this is a bad idea or isn't something that we need, or that we're heading kind of down the wrong route. Now, that doesn't mean that necessarily translates into action from all of those people. And of course, that's where what we're engaged in now, which is effectively sales efforts, come in. But we got incredibly enthusiastic response. And that then enabled us to start, and we then recruited Greg. So maybe that's a good time to turn to Greg. Sure.
I'll correct you slightly on the order of that. You could be recruited. We found each other before the fundraise, but still, it's a great journey to be involved in. So my background, I'm not a lawyer, so my background is in tech startups. Sort of did a computer computer science degree, and then went into tech startups really from the start of my career. Built several companies, B2C stuff as well as B2B, but the most sort of relevant one to this is a business here in the UK called Resolver. So I was one of the sort of founding members of Resolver with the founder there, James Walker, and built the product that that Resolver is today, which was two parts to it. One is a consumer advice and complaints management solution free to consumers here in the UK. But my baby, if you like, was the online dispute resolution tools that we built. And the first one of those was for traffic penalties and tickets, if you got parking tickets and so on here. We built a system with the tribunal here, and it's not dissimilar to what you saw in our demo today. What was really interesting about that period was that we were building solutions that were for the consumer, so they had to be really simple and no legal jargon and well guided and so on. But then they were being administered by legal bodies and ombudsmen, and that was a real interesting process that we've played quite heavily into Pink DR to make the process non-legal as much as possible and guided and slick, as you said earlier, Colin. So yeah, I was Ian and I and Guy stumbled upon each other as I was starting to look for a new project, and felt that there was a great fit there. So we jumped in, and then I've been managing the build of the product, and some of the more operational aspects of the business, like the fundraise and so on. And that's where we are today.
Well, thank you, Greg. I will say we had a Resolver present to an ICODR meeting several years ago, so we're big fans of the Resolver platform, and James has been a friend for a long time. So your reputation precedes you and some of the great work you've done there. But I think I want to open it up. Obviously, Amir and Tim know this space very well in the UK. They know Jeffrey Voss quite well. So I think to a certain extent, you're preaching to the choir. We're all converts here, like definitely this is a great, growing and exciting market. And and you guys have created a very slick platform, and you've got an incredible team. So, but one of the things that I wanted to ask, and I'm thinking about column 2 on the call, in Pink DR, it's not necessarily that your branding commits you to arbitration. Have you thought about integrating mediation or MEDARB or settlement conferences or a conciliation phase into the process? I understand it's expedited, so you can only fit so much stuff into a 6 to 8 week process, but it seems like mediation could be an option, for some of the parties, and if they can work it out, obviously you don't have to go through the rest of the arbitration. So I was just wondering if that's something that you've thought about, maybe as a future target.
Yes, I think is the short answer to that. We have thought about that. There are all sorts of other ways in which we intend to build an ecosystem around Pink DR, which would effectively help with what I described before, which is a dispute lands on the desk of a company, or a situation arises where they want to bring a claim or have to have themselves a dispute, and it's a way of handing that over in finding the simplest solution that solves that. And of course, speedy arbitration and a speedy resolution leading to a binding result is one way in which you achieve that, but it's not the only way. In many cases, parties will want assistance with a commercial resolution of that, but in circumstances where they might not know how to achieve it, or where using technology, we can really assist them to do that at a much quicker, more efficient way and a cheaper way. Yeah, I think where we want to get to is that this becomes a complete solution to a situation where a company has a dispute and comes into interaction with a dispute in some form or other.
Great. More questions, thoughts? Any other observations?
Yeah, I'll
please, Tim.
Thanks, Colin, and Ian and Greg, fascinating presentation. And Tim Wallace, I'm involved in mediation, but also arbitration. Arbitration is on low-value personal injury claims, and fascinating to see the work that you've done, because it's very similar to what we've done in many ways. Just one query about the nuts and bolts of the resolution getting to the arbitral award. I saw on the way through reference to document-based, but then also I saw reference to virtual hearings. I'm just a bit interested to know, is there a hearing or is it entirely document-based? I wasn't clear on that from the presentation. Sorry if I missed something there.
Yeah, I'll pick that one up if you like. Well done for pointing that out, because actually usually in those demos I will talk a little bit more about the document-based approach, so thanks for the prompt. So when I was showing the upload process, it's very much document-based. The default is documents only. There is a provision though for the arbitrator to request a hearing around a specific matter. So that might be a 1 hour or a 2 hour Zoom virtual hearing that is then uploaded to the platform and available like any other piece of evidence or documentation that's added. So yeah, the summary is documents only by default. There is the provision for short hearings, arbitrator-led.
Thanks, Rick. That's helpful.
You know, the irony is in the United States, we call expedited documents-based arbitration European style arbitration. So I'm not sure if the UK considers itself Europe anymore, but it's definitely that expedited process has an appeal, and we just associate it with Europe. So I think that there is, as Iain mentioned, there is a market definitely for companies to say, look, we don't want to get into a long drawn out process with all these motions. There's the head of the Pepperdine Strauss Institute for Dispute Resolution, Tom Stepano, which has written that arbitration is the new litigation. And what you see is it's really become a private court. And a lot of the people who utilize arbitration, they start to, they want to get a former judge to run the process. They want to have motions. They want to have discovery. They want to have all this stuff. So what that's done is it's really, the initial appeal of arbitration, it was going to be fast. It was expedited. It was a streamlined process. But when you turn it into the new litigation, it just starts to, expand and expand. And we have arbitrations in the States that go for years and years and years. I'm sure that's the case in the UK as well. But I like this idea of a fixed time, fixed price arbitration. I think there's a good market for that. And I like your focus on tech companies too, because they don't want to get caught in one of these endless processes, these kind of low intensity, ongoing conflicts. It's almost like a bloodletting. So I think it'll be interesting to see how your sales go. With those cases. Tina, I see you put your hand up. What did you want to say?
I did. Thank you, Colin. 2 questions. The first question has to do with the platform itself, and thank you for the walkthrough. Is the intent that the hearings would be conducted in English only? That's my first question. And the second question had to do with a comment that was made regarding what I would call in the tech world scope creep. And that is you mentioned that if the arbitrator finds out that the scope of work that the parties believed it was going to be is more, that you would not adjust, or did I mishear you? And would you reconsider that? Because sometimes we find out after the parties have come to us with their initial dispute that the issues at hand are much larger and much more time consuming. So if let's say it was initially thought as tier 1 and it's actually tier 2 or tier 3, what's your workflow for that? Or did I hear you correctly that it stays at tier 1 and we just have to work through it?
I'll pick up the language one, and then perhaps Iain, you can pick up the second one around scope creep of the cases. Language-wise on the platform now, the platform supports cases in any language, documents in any language. An arbitrator would be selected based on local language, but the platform itself is only available in English right now. So you have to be able to navigate the platform. Of course, you could use browser plugins to make that a bit better, but the platform's in English. Same applies to hearings. If the arbitrator, let's, for example, say we've got a Portuguese speaking parties and the arbitrator was a Portuguese speaker and that was selected for that reason, then the hearing, of course, could be held in Portuguese as well.
Scope creep is a really good point. And we've done a few things. One is that we have designed the process in a way which tries to limit scope creep. So the first part of the process is that both parties have to put in a submission, as Greg showed, that deals with the case. And there isn't then a second round of submissions. Often scope creep comes from people in a reply and a rejoinder then going raise all sorts of new cases, which then take the case in a different direction. There isn't scope for that because there isn't that second round. Now, so you can't exclude it, but you do various things to limit the opportunities for that. And also, Pink DR is designed for cases which are lower value. That doesn't always mean they're the easiest cases, but either they're less complex, or in any event, they justify a speedier process. There is no point having a very long process, which for a case which is still worth $300,000. A proportionality consideration comes into that. Having said all of that, we thought when we were designing the rules that there has to be a let-out valve, because there are always going to be situations where something unexpected happens, and that might be that one of the parties falls under a bus, or it just can't comply with a time frame. Again, there has to be a let-out valve for that. But also there has to be a let-out valve for cases which, through no one's fault, through no fault of the process, become far more complicated that could possibly be dealt with in 6 to 8 weeks. And if that situation arises, it is Pink DR which makes the call as to whether the process then needs to be expanded to allow that case to go off in a different direction. Now, the difficulty in those cases, of course, is that in most situations like that, one party will be saying, no, this is not complicated at all, it can be dealt with in 6 to 8 weeks, and the other party will be saying, no, it can't, it needs to go off. That's what will happen in most pieces of litigation. And so it's not quite as simple as simply saying, well, it's now got really complicated. So there will, in those situations, will have to be a value judgment, and I would anticipate that unless the arbitrator is saying that this really can't be dealt with in this time, and it is a compelling situation that can't be dealt with in that time, that the presumption is that you keep parties to the process that they have contracted for. And one final thought, which is you can use Pink DR when it's inserted into contracts. We expect that in most situations, a contract, say for very small contracts, most situations, the contract will say Pink DR for disputes up to an amount of X, and for anything else, it goes to above that. So that in itself provides a bit of a safety valve for those kinds of disputes. But also, then the second area is where a dispute has arisen. Contract says New York court litigation, and the parties say there is no way that this dispute can be taken through that process. We just want to get a resolution and get on with our lives. We're a supplier to you, and we want to continue the supply relationship. And then they can enter into a Pink DR arbitration agreement, which is a very short, effectively one-pager, allocating that dispute to Pink DR. Of course, in that situation, the second one, you would hope that parties will by then have already assessed the nature of their dispute and be able to say, this is one which is suitable for a process of 6 to 8 weeks. And I would have thought that both the arbitrator and Pink DR should be pretty skeptical if halfway through that process, one of the parties says, oh, actually, well, things have changed and we think it now needs a process that will take a year.
It's a great question. I do think there may be some circumstances where one party is highly incentivized to use an expedited process and the other party is not. They want to draw it out. And you see cases where you see just a flurry of counterclaims just to complicate the process because they want to extend the timeline. So I can see that being an issue. Before I go to Mehrez, I just wanted to ask about your clause. So what I heard you describe, Iain, is that you have a contract clause that could be integrated into contracts that would bind the parties. Presumably, these are only business-to-business disputes. We have pre-dispute binding B2C arbitration clauses in the US, but I don't think you have that in the UK. But you say only up to a certain threshold, right? So if the dispute goes beyond 3 million, so does the clause say if the dispute goes up to this threshold, we'll use Pink DR, and if it's more than that, then we'll use a different provider? Is that the way the clause works, or do you have multiple clauses?
Exactly. We have multiple clauses. So on the website, if you look under resources, and you can see the model clauses there. And so we've got Model A, which is pink DR.
Okay.
In vanilla. Model B, which is pink DR in a short form with no reasons.
Okay.
And then Model C being pink DR with a limit on the value of the claims. And then it will be for the parties to then, the parties can then select what they want to be the other route. If it's a claim which is above the value for pink DR, it's then for the parties to say themselves whether they want it to go to New York court or triple arbitration. Or
Got it. And one last question: will a pink DR outcome be enforceable under the New York Convention?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a New York Convention award.
Okay, great. Erez, please, what did you want to say?
The question that I had actually is, did I get you right when you spoke about ChatGPT that would prepare the procedural aspect of the before drafting the award? Is it based on the documents filed in a given case that ChatGPT will be preparing the procedural aspect and any other aspects of documents provided by the arbitrators?
Yep. So the example I gave did use like a ChatGPT interface. The product that we're developing there is not based on ChatGPT. It's another model. But yes, in your example, so it will take all of the inputs, the documents, the messaging, the timeline of the case, and inputs from the arbitrator, and prepares that temporal procedural order part of the award. Yeah.
Thank you.
Colin, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, brilliant platform, really is. I'm based in Ontario, and so we have a problem, just like Colin said, which is too many people see arbitration as litigation light and try to read in the rules of court, and that's the kiss of death as far as an efficient process goes. But we're also in a time of, I think, fairly great change, because our federal government has decided policy-wise that every contract will have an arbitration clause. And that's a huge, Canadian federal government, that's a huge change. So we're going to see a greater demand for arbitration services. But almost all of our training is based on the idea of big arbitrations. And they're very legalistic. I mean, I'm actually involved with a group we're designing for the kind of range you're talking about, an arbitration course. So, I mean, I think this is great. If it was completely integrated, because I come from a mediation background, and arbitration's kind of there. I did it, but my real thing is med-arb, which rarely goes to arbitration, but produces quite good results in mediation because everybody's prepared. So the idea of pushing everything through like this, really quite fascinating. So it would be nice if we could do all, but if we can do this thing, and it looks like we can do it really well, got a huge potential, I think. We're trying to say to people, use arbitration instead of letting the cases sit in your filing cabinet, whether electronic or physical. And our courts are in a mess. So I think it's a good time for arbitration.
Yeah. And that's it's all over. I was speaking to someone from Poland who was telling me he had 3 cases on, each of them worth about €1 million, and each of them were in their 7th year. And he said, realistically, they're just not going to get to court. He said, so many cases, everybody knows you're never going to get a final hearing. And so it's a battle of wills and finances as to who sort of blinks first in order to, and that's the person that wins. Which is not great. So that's a problem. The other problem is courts being inundated. In India, there are literally millions of cases sat waiting to be determined. The same in Brazil. So yeah, now does feel like a good time. I agree with you.
Absolutely. A couple final comments and questions. I think it was in Greg's portion of the presentation, you talked about smart contracts. Is that something that there's a lot of talk about how we could integrate arbitration in some of these smart contracts. Is that blockchain? Is that a priority moving forward?
It's on the roadmap. So the part of the of our sort of very clear roadmap is this API development. We've already got a layer in there for that, and integration into smart contracts from the outset. So yes, is the answer. But if a smart contract dispute was to happen now, then it would be brought in the same way as any other.
Got it. Yeah, and I guess one of the other questions I had is I saw you had Adrian as one of your advisors. You know, in a sense, you could be a competitor to LCIA and some of these other service providers. I mean, you're kind of an insurgent service provider. You're focused on the low end of the market, so probably LCIA is focused on the higher end of the market. But I mean, would there be a possibility, like if I was an ad hoc arbitrator and I had parties that came to me, could I come to Pink DR and say, hey, I want to use your platform to manage system? You know, is your platform only for the delivery of services through your panel, or do you have a plan to open it up so that it could be white labeled under another, like LCIA could use the platform for certain cases, or ad hoc arbitrators could come in and then use the platform themselves if they've already got a relationship with the parties, and their clause didn't specify Pink DR necessarily? Is that something that you're thinking about?
Again, yes. In fact, I spoke to a newly established arbitration institution that wants to offer expedited arbitration and is looking to use a platform, you know, wants a tech platform in which to do it, and is talking, you know, and we are talking to them about that. So that is a possibility. But interestingly, Adrian Winstanley, who's on the advisory board, but also wrote the rules, drafted the rules for Pink DR, having the LCIA rules, and so in many ways he was able to cut through, again, some of the things that might be necessary in the larger cases that the LCIA sees and similarly the ICC sees. And in one way you could say they're competitors. Actually, the way that we see it is that we're not in competition with them, just as we're not in competition with the courts. For the courts, actually, speaking to Jeffrey Voss, he says this is great to take.
Please, yeah, please take it. They don't want these cases, yeah. Right.
Yeah. And you know, the ICC, I'm quite heavily involved with the ICC. I've been on the ICC UK committee for about 6 years. And we've had lots of discussions with them. In fact, Guy Pendle, who's the co-founder, is the chair of the ICC UK committee.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so at least now, very much not competitive, and I can see, I think, as you say, a way in which we could work together with those institutions, and that they could refer cases, and we can provide technology to assist them with those cases.
Sure. Well, if past experience is any predictor, I think oftentimes new entrants will start with these lower dollar value cases that the courts don't want, and you know, the arbitral institutions don't want. But you know, once you start to get traction and everybody realizes how smooth and efficient the process is, you know, you're going to have people coming in and saying, "Hey, I got a $10 million, you know, 10 million pound case. Why can't I use your platform?" You know, you're like, "Well, it's not our sweet spot." It's like, well, come on, you know, come on. So demand is going to expand once word gets out. Well, I note that we're at the top of the hour. This is I can't thank the two of you enough. First of all, kudos to you for the great work you've done. This is a huge contribution in, you know, the field, in the space that we all care about, and very excited to see where it goes. You know, we want you to feel welcome in this community too. You know, obviously the ODR field, we have a lot of practitioners, we have a lot of academics, we have a lot of people who work within the courts, work within arbitral institutions. So, you know, please don't be strangers, and you know, hopefully you can participate in some of the upcoming fora. And if you have any questions, you want to have beta testers, if you try out new things, or you're looking to move into new areas, please don't hesitate to think of us. But maybe we can do a round of applause to thank Iain and Greg for joining us today. Round of applause.
Thank you very much. I will follow up with you guys with a bit of a note with some of the links to the clauses and the slides and so on that we used today. And if anybody wants to give it a go, then feel free to jump onto the Pink DR website, press start a claim, go through the process, and then let me know, and I can effectively waive the fee if you like, and let you go on into the rest of the process.
I always say that with my processes. Please do not start fake disputes just to try out my. I'll let you. You know, you can come in. You don't have to actually sue somebody in order to check it out. Miles, what were you going to say?
You just answered the question. We can test the system. That's what I wanted to know.
Yes, you can. Yeah, I mean, if we're doing a test case, then we'll have to work out who's the arbitrator and who your respondent might be. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and we can organise that, no problem.
The other thing is that we are putting together various other events, workshops. We've got a newsletter that, if you don't mind, we can add all of you to, and that will sort of keep you updated on when we have events and workshops and upcoming news.
Fantastic. If you have any news you want to circulate to the global ICODR membership, just let me know. I'll pass it along. So
that's really
all right. Thank you so much, gents. Have a
you.
wonderful day. Thank you everyone for joining, and stay tuned for some news about our May ICODR member meeting coming soon. Okay, take care.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.